The story of the NFL draft, everybody's story of the NFL draft, was Shedeur Sanders. That's right. Shedeur Sanders was the biggest story of the draft for so many different people. Shedeur Sanders was considered a top 5 pick. He fell all the way to the 5th round, and didn't just fall to the 5th round, but fell to a round in which a quarterback had already been taken in Dylan Gabriel, and to the worst franchise in America in the Cleveland Browns. So really, really, really bad day for Shedeur Sanders. I mean, I don't think anybody could debate that. That's as bad as it could possibly get. At the same time, he's going to have his chance. At the end of the day, he still got drafted. And the question has become, what led to Shedeur Sanders' drop? Because he was deemed a very high draft pick and a very valuable one. So why did somebody who could have been a very high draft pick just fall like that? And there's a lot of theories floating around. People are trying to say collusion. That makes no sense. NFL owners aren't going to do that. Okay, that's like when Des Bryant tried to say there was collusion against Nico Iamaleava, and one of the dumbest things anyone's ever said. There's not that. Owners aren't about to collude when they're desperate to try to win a game. That you just they just don't do that, guys. I'm sorry. So the question then becomes, what led to the fall? And I do think it's a couple of things. I think it's the interview process did go poorly. And by the way, I'm saying all this up front because I'm a Titans fan, and I still wanted my Titans to take Shedeur Sanders. I think Shedeur is actually better than Cam Ward. I hate that Shedeur fell like this because I think he actually is a very good talent. But, this is life. You can't do the things he did if you don't come across as a can't-miss prospect the way you need to come across. And that's just a lesson in life. So I got to point that out now before I get into my diatribe, because something's going to be brought up with this. But Shedeur didn't do the combine, was not good in the interview process, only spoke with 5 teams. There's obviously the baggage of his dad hanging around him, which people think would be a distraction. And here's the problem with all of that. He doesn't have the measurables to look like a can't-miss prospect. His pocket presence is incredible. His accuracy is deadly. He's got minimum arm strength. But he's not going to wow you with his mobility. Some people do think he holds the ball too long. I think that's more being at Colorado, didn't have a lot of help. But you do question also his level of competition being in the Big 12. And by the way, he's only 6'1". All of those things led to him falling, because you can't have intangible concerns about you if people are concerned about your physical measurables and you don't do anything to alleviate that. That's why he fell. So I want to bring up a couple of things real quick with this, okay? And the first is that, and this is a what the H moment, you hear a lot of people comparing Shedeur with his father and the politicking with what Eli and Peyton Manning did with Archie. And I got to talk about this as someone who covers Tennessee, obviously, and Peyton Manning. Stop making that comparison. Stop making that comparison. And I'm going to give you a couple of reasons to stop making that comparison. One, Peyton Manning actually didn't do any politicking. He got drafted by the Colts #1. He did all the workouts, did all the interviews. It was him versus Ryan Leaf. I guarantee you Peyton Manning was not going to lose interview battles to Ryan Leaf on that. There was a level of arrogance from Peyton Manning, because he did say at one point with Indianapolis, if you draft me, I'd actually like to come here. But if you don't, then I'm going to kick your you-know-what for the next 15 years. He did say that. But again, that's a different type of confidence that you want to see. Shedeur did the whole, y'all are lucky to draft me. Peyton made it very clear, like, I want to be drafted by you. He wanted to be drafted by Indianapolis. He did everything he could to be drafted by Indianapolis. Eli, on the other hand, yes, he did the whole forcing a trade because he didn't want to go to the Chargers. By the way, another reason Peyton wanted to be drafted by Indy, because he'd be stuck with the Chargers. Eli did this whole forcing a trade when it comes to the Chargers, and we all know ended up going to the Giants. Let me explain what happened with the Manning family. Archie Manning was stuck for 11 years playing for the worst franchise in the NFL. He didn't want his kids to go through that situation. So he would try to orchestrate moves in which they would get drafted by organizations that were not nearly as dysfunctional. Just so you know, Peyton Manning, I firmly believe to this day he would not have stayed till his senior year if the Jets didn't have the #1 pick in the draft. I think the Jets were such an incompetent franchise, Manning didn't want to play for them. Now, here's the other thing with the Mannings. One, they interviewed with every team. They were acing the interview processes. Look, we've heard this. Like, Peyton blew people away in the interviews. And then the final part is, and this one has to be brought up, The measurables. Now, I know people question Peyton's arm strength, and say he throws ducks. I think people are really stuck on the older Peyton Manning and not the younger one that was a much better athlete than people realized. But Peyton and Eli were both 6'5". Shedeur's 6'1". And Peyton and Eli had been tested playing in the SEC. Shedeur had been tested playing in the Big 12, and we don't know that level of competition. So comparing Shedeur Sanders and Deion to the Mannings is not a smart comparison. I mean, I just think that's I don't think that makes sense. I don't think there's any way you could rationally look at Shedeur Sanders and look at the Mannings and say that they were the same and Shedeur was punished for it while the Mannings weren't. No, that's not how that happened. The Mannings passed the measurables. Shedeur doesn't because they're 6'5", he's 6'1". They aced the interviews everywhere. They did not interview with teams, okay? There were a lot more than just, it wasn't, yes, there was the whole Eli being not wanting to go to the Chargers and his dad trying to force him out of there. That's fine, but that's not the same as what Shedeur was doing, where he only interviewed with 5 teams and he bombed the interviews from what we understand. So, look, let's be honest here. Again, 6'5" versus 6'1". That's the biggest thing. So stop comparing Shedeur to the Mannings. It just doesn't make sense. That's not an apt comparison. Quick message from Ted Russell Ford. We are going to play them real quick, and when we come back, we're also going to talk about who is Tennessee's historical version of Shedeur Sanders. I want to get that out, but you guys let me know. Guys who shockingly fell in the draft. First, a message from Ted Russell Ford.
Like a blast from the past, the Super Dealer is back. Look to the skies, Knoxville. The Super Dealer is fighting for price, service, and the American-made. Ted Russell Ford is East Tennessee's #1 volume Ford dealer. Save up to $4,350 on a new Ford F-150 XLT, or get into a new Ford Ranger XLT with no payments for 90 days. Come see the Super Dealer today at either Ted Russell Ford location.
Nathaniel Kim with an epic quote. Shedeur learned nothing from the Nico drama. Nathaniel, that's a great point. That's a great point. Shedeur learned nothing from the Nico drama. As a matter of fact, is Shedeur Sanders the NFL version of Nico Iamaleava? It's a great question. I'm going to put that on the poll, which is a classic case of thinking you have all this leverage, milking it to a certain degree, and then realizing that you played yourself because teams turned against you for it. That's a great, great, great question. Is Shedeur Sanders the NFL's version of Nico Iamaleava? Yes, both played themselves. And no is the other one. Okay. I'll let you guys go vote on that right now. So that's kind of a interesting point. Now let's go to Tennessee. Who is Tennessee Shedeur Sanders, guys, historically? I got a few people in mind, and I want you guys to just bounce it off the message board, and you guys can give me your thoughts on these people that I'm naming, because they all might be a little intriguing to you. The first one to me is Tyler Bray. Tyler Bray but it's a reverse of Shedeur, because Shedeur didn't have the measurables, but came looking like a head case. So all he had was the accuracy. Tyler Bray had the arm strength. I mean, he had the arm strength. Tyler Bray may have had the best arm a Tennessee player ever had. I mean, he sidearmed it, and he could put that ball anywhere. Left early for the NFL draft and didn't get drafted. And all signs were it was his intangibles that kept him getting drafted. So Tyler Bray strikes me as the Shedeur Sanders of all people. A couple other people who shockingly fell on the draft. Trey Smith, due to his injury history, but I think the injury history made you understand that. Jawan Jennings. That was a character concern that I think hurt Jawan Jennings. That was unfair, because Jawan Jennings lashed out at the coaches in 2017, and every Tennessee fan supported him staying, but he was kicked off, and then Jimmy Pruitt comes and reinstates him. But I think all those issues actually hurt him with teams, and that's why he fell, and now San Francisco loves him, by the way. I'll give you a crazy one, Jason Witten. Now, Jason Witten wasn't a low draft pick. Let's be fair on this, but Jason Witten, to be fair, should have been much higher than he was. Jason Witten was drafted by the Cowboys in the 3rd round with the 69th pick. And all you ever got with Jason Witten was lesser Jeremy Shockey. Not as good as Jeremy Shockey. Not as good as Jeremy Shockey. And I remember watching them both play in college thinking Jason Witten's better than Jeremy Shockey. Now, Dave Hooker has a story on this to a certain degree, but there are reports that Philip Fulmer sandbagged Jason Witten and did not give him good reviews because Fulmer was not happy that he didn't stay till his senior year of college. It was a different time. And that hurt Fulmer's reputation with some players, from my understanding. I'll say that. I don't think that relationship is great. Just going to put that out there. I'm not so sure Witten and Fulmer have the best relationship. I thought Witten was criminally underused, honestly. And I think that's also why he fell to the third round. Another player who fell to the third round for being criminally underused, Alvin Kamara. That's right. Remember, he fell to the third round because Butch Jones was trying to make Jalen Hurd work so well. So you guys give me, who are some guys that you think unfairly, shockingly fell in the NFL draft that probably shouldn't have fallen the way they did? I got a lot in mind. I think there's probably a lot more that I'm not thinking of right now. And if you guys want to put them on the message board, we're just going to, there's so many players that Tennessee's had get drafted late that actually, to their credit, have turned out to be solid players. But I think some of their character issues or questions about their character are why they fell. In Jason Witten's case, it wasn't about his character. It's just he had an unfortunately, not great relationship with his head coach at that point, funny enough, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. He still shouldn't have fallen to the third round, if I'm being honest. And, we can go back, in the 90s, all the Pro Bowlers, they were all getting drafted really, 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 really high. So it's hard to know exactly which ones you guys would see, but I will say that there are a lot of players whose off the field stuff for Tennessee has unfortunately hurt them in the draft. And sometimes it was not their fault and it was a little bit unfair. So it's just worth looking into those. But I think the biggest one, the Shedeur Sanders of Tennessee, is Tyler Bray. Tyler Bray brought in some baggage. There was the fact that he didn't win at Tennessee, the fact that he didn't have the intangibles. He had left early after his junior year, and despite having the best physical tools in the draft, ended up not getting drafted. That was a really bad look.